Hello and welcome to the final dissertation defense of Kokou Gadedji. He's going to speak to us about a very interesting management accounting dissertation.
Thank you, Dr. Darcy. Sorry. Here is the agenda. First, I will talk about the story behind this topic, go through the literature review, announce the hypothesis, present the methodology, and the result. So first thing first, what is the story behind this topic? So back in 2008, I worked as a management accountant at a very small business in Morocco. The name of the company is Supplemental in Marrakesh, Morocco. And one day, my boss told me that he has a long-term orientation. And for that reason, he needs to start implementing certain management accounting practices. Now, in this program, I want to test what my boss told me. I want to test if the temporal orientation of a small business owners affects the choice of management accounting practices. So since I have been talking about management accounting, what is the definition of management accounting? Management accounting has so many definitions, but to make it simple, management accounting can be defined as the accounting segment that procures information to internal users. An example of internal users will be something like business managers. Management accounting includes both qualitative and quantitative information. Example of quantitative information will be computation of a product cost, computation of product profitability, computation of a break-even analysis, etc., etc. An example of a qualitative information will be market share evaluation, for example, or customer satisfaction evaluation. My next question is management accounting useful for small businesses? Well, the answer to that question is not without controversy. We have two lines of agreement in the literature. The first view is that management accounting is useful for small businesses, as management accounting helps small businesses control their costs and help them determine the price of their product. The second view refutes the usefulness of management accounting practices for small businesses and states that management accounting can actually hamper the development of small businesses, as management accounting can create bureaucracy and reduce the flexibility of small businesses. Now, my question is, why do we have that controversy in the literature? Well, it's because small businesses are not the same. Small businesses are not a heterogeneous set of organization. So the management accounting practices that benefit one small business may not benefit another. So how small businesses differs? So in the literature, I can find something like, we have a small businesses that are managed by their owners versus those that are managed by just employees. We have difference in business size. We have a small business, but we have also micro businesses, small business with just like 5 employees. For example, in the small businesses where we have like a lot of employees, we have a written budget. But in small businesses with just 5 people or 2 people, management accounting is informal. Or sometimes it does not even exist. Another difference is we have small businesses that are family businesses, and we have small businesses that are non-family businesses. And in the literature, they show that the management accounting practices decrease when in the family small businesses. And the literature is missing something. How about this? the temporal orientation of small business owners. And that is another way small businesses differ. For example, some owners are short-term oriented as they want immediate results. Something like, oh, I just want this monthly salary, or I just want this current income, the income of this month, and for my family. And we have small business owners who are long-term oriented. They take into consideration the current operation, but they also want to expand their companies. They are introducing new products, etc., etc. Based on these two types, I want to investigate if the temporal orientation of a small business owners affects the choice of management accounting practices. Why investigating the temporal orientation is because the temporal orientation pretty much decides how you run your business. It determines your strategies. So it's important that this strategy be supported by adequate management accounting practices. And another reason is because I want to answer the call of Kaza, Cheng, Grabner, and Model to investigate management accounting practices used for different temporal orientation. So how did I answer my research question? To answer my research question, I developed a theory where I showed that short-term oriented small business owners and long-term oriented small business owners will select different management accounting practices as they don't have the same objective. And this is consistent with contingency theory, which suggests that, or which indicates that organizations implement management accounting practices that are relevant to their context. Based on that argument, I created two hypotheses. The first one states that in addition to quantitative operational management accounting practices, long-term oriented small business owners will extend their management accounting practices to include more qualitative management accounting practices and long-run management accounting practices. So as you can see here, we have three types of management accounting practices here. The first one is operational management accounting practices. For that one, I expect both short-term oriented small business owners and long-term oriented small business owners to place the same importance. Why? Because quantitative operational management accounting practices are designed to analyze routine decisions, are designed to analyze short-term decisions. So even if you are long-term oriented, you should care about the current operation of your business. So short-term and long-term people will select quantitative operational management accounting practices the same way. How about long-run accounting analysis? I posit that long-term oriented small business owners will select more long-run management accounting analysis as long-term oriented small business owners invest in projects with delayed returns. So they will need long-run management accounting measures to analyze those projects. And the last one, I'm expecting long-term oriented small business owners to select more qualitative information than short-term oriented small business owners because the literature links long-term orientation with qualitative information. My second hypothesis assesses the moderating effect of the number of owners and posits that as the number of owners goes up, the information will go up. The reasoning is that when we have multiple owners at the helm of a single entity, they will be required to make collegial decision, which will necessitate the exchange of more accounting information. And also, management accounting can be implemented in case of a plurality of ownership to solve agency problems. Here is the model. Next, my methodology. And for the methodology, I start with my research design. So for the research design, I use a scenario-based experiment. So what is the benefit of using scenario-based experiment? It helps me capture only the effect of my independent variable on my dependent variable. And by doing that, I control for the other factors that could influence my dependent variable. I control for the other factors that could also explain my dependent variable. To assign participants to group, I use between subjects. So what is a between subject? Between subjects consists of assigning each participant to just one scenario. Why between subjects? It's because in my theory, I posit that small business owners are either short-term or long-term oriented. So it's logical to present or to expose just one condition to participants. So for the participants, who are the participants? Well, a total of 365 business students participate in this study, but the usable sample was 322, as 43 participants failed the manipulation check question. Most participants have completed introductory accounting courses such as management accounting, and the participants are deemed suitable to understand the experiment as they are business students. And also, the material used for the experiment is very simple, and it took just 5 minutes to complete the experiment. And I believe also that students, because we are giving them credit, also took the experiment seriously. But still, I still have questions. Students are not business owners. So the argument is, prior study says that we can use students as a surrogate, as substitute for practitioners in experimental studies involving decision-making. And the next argument is, in my sample, I have 7.76% of participants that are small business owners, and 43% have also a strong desire to become small business owners. This is the distribution, the participant demographic distribution. There is no significant difference between the groups in terms of gender, experience working in small businesses, management position, or experience working in accounting or class standing. So how did I manipulate my independent variables? So to manipulate my two independent variables, temporal orientation, short-term versus long-term, and ownership, single owner versus multiple owners, I created 4 scenarios. So in the first scenario, participants assume the role of a small business owner who has a short-term orientation, while in the second scenario, they assume the role of a small business owner who has a long-term orientation. The third and fourth scenarios portray 2 small business owners with a short and long-term orientation respectively, and ask participants to assume the role of one of the 2 business owners. And this is just the scenarios, briefly. Experimental procedures. So participants click on the Qualtrics link and get assigned to one of the 4 conditions automatically. After reading the scenario, participants were presented with a list of 20 management accounting practices and were tasked to select the practices they will use to run their business. After selecting the management accounting practices, participants responded to manipulation check and demographic questions. This is the list that we presented to the participants. Compute product costs, compute profitability, prepare operating budget, compare differences between actual and budgeted amounts, etc., etc. Manipulation check question. So the manipulation check question asks participants to identify the temporal orientation that corresponds to the objectives of the small business owners. And as I have stated earlier, 43 participants failed the manipulation check question, and their data have been removed from the analysis. And a further analysis show that even when I reinsert the 43 participants, there was no effect on the result. I also ask participants to tell me what are the factors that influence their choice of information. These are the choices: because I want to increase short-term profit, because I want to increase long-term profit, because I want to work more with the most profitable customers, because I want to attract new customers. So the objective of this question is to test my manipulation. So the expectation is, I'm expecting participants in the short-term orientation conditions to accord more importance to factors like I want to increase short-term profit, or I want to work with my most profitable customers. And I'm expecting participants in the long-term orientation condition to focus more on things like I want to increase long-term profit, or I want to attract new customers. So after this question, I ran one-way ANOVA to test my predictions. So as you can see, ANOVA results confirm that participants in short-term orientation conditions place more importance to things like I want to work with the most profitable customers, or I just want to increase short-term profits. And participants in the long-term orientation conditions accords more importance to long-term profit and attract new customers. Dependent variable. So my dependent variable is the choice of management accounting practices. How did I measure the dependent variable? By asking participants to select the management accounting practices they will use to run the business. And the management accounting practices given to participants include 3 types of management accounting. We have quantitative operational management accounting, long-run management accounting, and qualitative management accounting practices. But these groupings are from the literature, and I cannot use these groupings to do my analysis. So for that reason, prior study recommend that I conduct factor analysis. So before I conducted the factor analysis, I tested for the sampling adequacy. I'm just checking if the data can be used to perform factor analysis. And as you can see the results of the sampling adequacy tests of Kaiser, Meyer, Orlin, and Bartlett test, the test shows that the result of the Kaiser, Meyer, Orlin measure of sampling adequacy is 0.6, and for a good data, if the data is good, it has to be at least 0.5. So I am above the cutoff, 0.6. And these are the results of the factor analysis. I came up with 3 factors. The first factor englobes quantitative operational management accounting practices. The second factor is made of qualitative information. And the third factor is made of long-run accounting measures. And the total variance explained is 52.5, which is above the cutoff, which is 50%. And all the eigenvalues are above 1, because you need eigenvalue of 1 to have factors, to establish factors. Before I show the results, I completed some ANOVA assumptions testing. So my first test is the assumption of a homogeneity of variance using Levin's test of equality of variance. As you can see, Levin's test of equality of variance is not significant, so that's a good sign. That indicates that the assumption of a homogeneity of variance is not violated. The next assumption that I tested is the normality of the data. So you can see I had significance, so that means that the assumption of a normality has been violated, but that is not an issue because I have a larger sample. So for the results, the hypothesis 1, just a reminder, states that in addition to quantitative operational management accounting practices, long-term oriented small business owners will extend their management accounting practices to include more qualitative management accounting practices and long-run management accounting analysis compared to short-term oriented small business owners. So before I show the ANOVA results, I have the descriptive statistics. As you can see, in a short-term orientation condition, we have 147 participants, and in a long-term orientation condition, we have 175 participants. And these two groups are considered to be almost equal because the higher group divided by the lower group is less than 1.5. And also, as you can see, the mean of short-term orientation for factor 1 is higher compared to the mean of long-term orientation, etc., etc. So to test hypothesis 1, I ran 3 ANOVAs. So the first ANOVA for factor 1, so that compared the quantitative operational management accounting practices selected by participants in short-term orientation condition with participants in the long-term orientation condition. As you can see, there is no difference here. So this means that both short-term and long-term oriented small business owners accord the same importance to quantitative operational management accounting practices. And this makes sense because, as I said earlier, even if you are long-term oriented, you should take care of the current operation. And to analyze the current operation, you need things like product cost computation, break-even analysis, or prepare operating budget. So for the factor score, the factor score 2, compare qualitative information selected by participants in short-term orientation condition with those in the long-term orientation condition. I predicted that there will be a difference, but there is no difference. So that means, again, that both short-term and long-term oriented small business owners place the same importance to both, to qualitative information. And for factor score 3, there is a significance. So that means that long-term oriented small business owners accord more importance to long-run measure compared to short-term oriented small business owners. And this is where I can say that temporal orientation actually affects the choice of management accounting practices. For the hypothesis 2, for the moderating effect, when I compare single owners with multiple owners, there is no significance. And maybe that might be attributed to the manipulation because I say you and your business partner. For example, if we say you run your business with 10 people or 50 people, maybe there might be a difference. I conducted some supplemental analysis because of the violation of the normality of the data. I conducted the robust test of equality of means, and I had the same result as the normal ANOVA. I also conducted another supplemental analysis where I used only students who completed management accounting. So the results are pretty much the same. They are the same for qualitative information and quantitative operational measures, but they are not the same for factor 3. And for conclusion, what are the contributions of this study? I believe the study has several contributions. First, I answered the call to investigate management accounting practices used for different temporal orientation. I'm extending the literature by adding the temporal orientation of small business owners as antecedent of the choice of management accounting practices. And I believe that this study can be used to advise small business owners. For example, if you are long-term oriented small business owners, you should consider all the 3 types of accounting practices that we identify in this study. The limitations and future research. So first, I employ an experimental design and uses students as proxies for small business owners. So the problem here, people can say, are students the same as small business owners? They are not the same. But the argument that I can state is prior studies say that it's okay to do that. But if we do this study with small business owners, the result might not be the same. For example, if we use small business owners, they will select only the management accounting practices that they are using to run their businesses. But students, they know a lot of management accounting practices. The second limitation is from the list of management accounting practices that I presented to the participants. Even though the list was comprehensive, I investigated a lot of management accounting practices, it's still not exhaustive. I may have omitted some management accounting practices. And also, information is not free. I didn't say that, for example, for quantitative operational management accounting measure, they cost less than qualitative information, for example. So future research can assign costs when they are doing this type of research in the future. And for future research, it will be very interesting to assess if the temporal orientation of business owners affect their choice of internal controls, because we have different types of internal controls. And thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Kokou.
Thank you.
I like to talk about the internal control issue, that the last topic that you had.
Mhm.
Among the list of 20 items, you can scroll back to the list of 20 somehow. You had internal controls in there.
Mhm.
And internal controls are different in nature than computational things like break-even analysis.
Mhm.
There you are. None of the internal controls were chosen
Mhm.
or were included.
Mhm.
And so I wonder if you could just sort of talk about that or reflect on that, why neither short-term nor long-term people thought it was important, for example, to do bank reconciliations. A typical business practice, hard to imagine a business that can survive without that at some level.
So first, that's what I get from the factor analysis results. So I didn't select the factors, and unfortunately, the internal controls were not loaded, like you are saying. But I believe it's just how small business owners act. So, for example, if I am the only owner, I know how to track my money. And reconciliation is about that. Reconciliation is verifying if there is a consistency between your system and what the bank statement is saying. So I believe they do that by just using their intuition, if I can say that.
So in other words, you don't need procedures if you're the only person doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with that. So the establishing capital investment procedures, establishing expense approval procedures, performing bank reconciliations, those kinds of things would not be likely to be something that they think that they would need, especially if they're students.
Yeah.
So it kind of hooks into my other main question. So you had a discussion about why students are a good proxy for small business owners. But in your chart showing the distribution of years for their freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, do you think that all of the years of the students, and regardless of their accounting training, would really be equivalent? It seems to me that, or I wonder if your students who are juniors and seniors who've had more accounting training and understand more about business would be more likely to choose differently or understand those more advanced topics.
Yes, there is a possibility there that if you are like upper level business students, you may think maybe you may think better compared to someone who is a sophomore, for example. So maybe that is another limitation. Maybe to do this study in the future, I can use only upper level accounting classes, or I can use actually MBA students.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Darcy. Thank you, Kokou. I enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
Just a couple of things that relate somewhat to some of what Dr. Becker was saying, but also just a couple of clarifications, kind of running in order. I guess my first question, when you ran H2, so if you could bring up your results for hypothesis 2, I just want to clarify what you were reporting on. Here, thank you. So just to clarify what we're looking at, so is that looking at the interaction term then for
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure to clarify that. Okay. So just make sure in your paper that that's clear,
Yeah.
that what you're looking at there. When you did the where you did the sensitivity analysis, if you go forward a few slides and you were looking at excluding the management accounting. Oh, I think actually the other direction. Where yes, closer to the end. There. I just your last factor there, you identified that as internal controls. Is that intentional, or is that should that still be the long range management accounting?
When I conducted this using only students, I did another factor analysis, came up with 3 factors, and this time I had bank reconciliation and approval as a 3rd factor.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, the factors are different.
Okay. Okay. And then I'm wondering if you, as another consideration for a supplemental analysis, just to see if it would have any impact, because I know we talked a lot about the sample and the students, and that was why we had asked for this analysis. One other one where you have roughly half your sample that a smaller percentage that identifies as a small business owner, but if you take into consideration those with a desire to be small business owners, about half the sample. Did you do any sensitivity analysis looking there to see just that? Because I wonder if that would be a potential to consider to see, because if they have that goal, maybe there's some type of motivation that could be considered. So just, with the idea of looking towards publication, to think about something else that maybe could give something. That's something to consider as well.
Thanks.
And I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Hand it off to Dimitri. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kokou. Very good presentation. I just had a couple suggestions for the future. I don't really have any questions. So on the dependent variable page, when there was a list of 20 people, was there a timer in there? So do you know how long people spent on that page? So maybe going back to that and seeing if there is some outliers there, if people spend maybe too long or maybe too little. I'm kind of more concerned about the too little. Yeah. If there's a lot to read, so if people only spend 10 seconds picking them, I would argue that's another way of identifying people who didn't pay attention. And then, as you mentioned in your presentation, you might consider running another study with small business owners. Have you considered measuring temporal orientation as opposed to manipulating temporal orientation? And because it seems there was some difficulty manipulating it with the high manipulation check failure rate, as people, 10% of your sample did not internalize it, even though the question check was right after it just happened and they already forgot. So maybe measuring it would be another way to get around there. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And 7% of your sample actually owned businesses?
Yes, almost 8%.
So that's between 25 and 30 people. So that might be enough people to do some analysis on. And it might be worth stripping that out, doing analysis on everybody else, because everybody else has in common, we don't own a small business. And you might be able to figure out some way to compare those who do with all these large number of people who don't. Since you have those variables, you can separate things out on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.